pretty innovative when you think about it. Don't have to build a shed or a cache. So that's a classic design. We're going to see some newer ones in a little while. And another real common question that we'll get is, what does everybody do for a living? Here in Fairbanks, the answer really isn't all that different than anywhere that you're from, I would guess. A little bit of everybody. White collar, blue collar, professionals and tradespeople. It's a young population. The average age is only 27. There's 2 big military bases and then a 10,000 student university behind us. But there are lots of retired folks here too. Over to the left, this is a retirement cabin. I mean, I don't know what else you could possibly want. Plane, boat, dock, postcard perfect little cabin with moose antlers over a great big deck. This couple was in commercial aviation, others are in the military. We've got more retired military in Alaska than any other state. And it's not a who's who out here either, it's just folks living their lives. Although I would point out, we've had some special guests, like this light brown home with the red umbrella over to our right side. That's where Ronald and Nancy Reagan lived in 1984. You didn't know that, did you? For 3 whole days.
Oh, I know.
With Senator Frank Murkowski, who actually owned it back then. And the reason they were here, the Reagans, is they were refueling Air Force One on their way back from China. We found out 2 days later, Pope John Paul II was going to refuel on the way out to Korea. Both of them at our airport, going over the pole. And so, once we put all that together, the Reagans decided to hang around, met with the Pope, and we got to host the summit at the top of the world. That's what they call it. It was the first time CNN ever bothered to come up here for anything. That's it. Breaking news, the Pope and the President are getting gas. We all came out to watch. 60,000 of us on the tarmac and nobody left in the town. Now over to the left, we'll give you a look at some modern log construction. Under that green roof, there's 1.5 miles of white spruce. Great big windows, so nobody gets cabin fever anymore. Don't go batty when it's dark 21 hours a day. And Jack McManus has a nice spot right next door, actually his second home on that spot. His first one burned down, so he just built another one. And we know that's where Jack lives because there's a sign right out there that says Jack McManus on it. Oh, and the man himself, ladies and gentlemen. Retired attorney from Wisconsin, American by birth and Alaskan by choice. We know that because we read it 4 times a day. I'm glad he was here. And that he had his shirt on today. Now, one of our favorite Alaskans by choice is a young woman who moved here from Massachusetts in 1975 named Susan Butcher. If you look at this dog yard just downstream of that pretty modern home to the right, see a white box on stilts, little houses below? That's where John Verbeek's kennel was, and that's where Susan kind of learned about dog mushing with the guy they called the Flying Dutchman. That was John Verbeek's nickname. So she learned from him, bought some of his dogs to start her kennel. And John Verbeek laughed all the way to the bank with a little girl buying dogs and thinking she's going to run. Well, guess who won the Iditarod 4 times? That's right, Susan Butcher. And those t-shirts started coming out that said Alaska, where men are men and women win the Iditarod. And everybody knew the score. And we're going to learn a lot more about the remarkable Susan Butcher, by the way, because we're going to go by her home soon, Trailbreaker Kennels, which is out here on the Chena. And you'll get to see it in just a little while. Now, the next pretty long home, coming up on the right, is one we'd like to show you because it was built entirely by hand as a tribute to the pioneers. And it took the guy 5 years to do it, too. Cut down every tree, peeled them with a draw knife after dragging them in from a little ways away. And then fit them all together. That, I think, is as much a work of art as it is a home. Built in the 1980s, so it's not really old, but using that same method. But his brother lives right next door and wanted nothing to do with a log home, so again, you see something completely different, even within the families. Pretty wood siding. Great big windows again. And a hot tub right on the deck, which they will use in the winter. That's not just for summer. At Christmas Eve, 40 below, send Dad out to heat the water up while the rest of the family watches through the big windows in their bathing suits. And then when they get the thumbs up, everybody else will streak out, jump in the tub, and watch the northern lights dance right overhead. If you want to imagine that. Or maybe you would like to imagine getting out of that water soaking wet on a night like that and back into your house, which will stiffen your Speedo if you don't get a move on. It chafes. Everybody has their own well and septic out here, so each property is self-contained in that regard. Power and phone service from the poles out back, and heating with oil-fired furnaces, #2 home heating fuel that you can go get yourself or have a truck bring out to you. But you're going to want to have wood as a backup, just in case you have any furnace trouble. You get a blocked fuel nozzle that happens sometimes, and the power goes out. You keep wood in the bullpen so you can fire up your wood stove or fireplace and be able to keep warm. And the people that come and fix these things will work 24 hours a day, so they'll take care of you, but still. Back though in the 1930s and 40s, when Jim Binkley was running freight out on these rivers, you didn't see houses. You'd see sternwheelers, maybe half a dozen of them lined up along this left bank, coming and going from a freight yard we're about to pass, where some of the old boats from that era still sit. Jim really liked to recycle and keep things. He didn't throw stuff away, but some of these other captains just figured, well, I'm done with the boat, I'm going to leave it here. And that's kind of neat because it turned it into a museum for us by accident. There's a green one on the shore you'll see as we pass by, called the Seawolf. And then there's the trees part in the back, the old Pelican, back behind those pallets. That's gray and white. Followed by what's left of the Mildred out here in front. Really going back to nature. But this was a busy spot in the mid-1900s, and the proof of it's going to pop up on your monitor. Railroads would bring freight into the interior. Trucks would go to the rail yard, bring everything to the boat yard. They'd load those goods on barges, and then these vessels would push that freight through swift and shallow rivers all the way to the Bering Sea. 1,200 miles out, 1,200 miles back, 10 times a summer. They could fit that many trips in without getting stuck all the time. Shallow draft vessels. This is the Pelican pushing one of those barges right here. You see there's a little snow on the bank and on the load. Boats came in all shapes and sizes too. Little ones like those we just passed, or some like this one, the Sternwheeler Yukon, which is a lot bigger and heavier than we are on Discovery 3. And there's a very special bit of shared history between the Yukon and the D3 that we want to tell you more about now from somebody who knows the story well, as her grandfather was right in the middle of it. This is Captain Matty again on your monitor. And Captain, what is it that these two big boats have in common?
Really good question, JR. First of all, I would just like to welcome everyone back to Wheelhouse of Discovery 3. And what JR was alluding to just now is this wheel that I've been using to navigate us down the river. This is actually the original ship's wheel from the steamer Yukon, which is that last vessel we saw on the slideshow there. And that boat, along with this wheel, built in the early 1900s, got quite a few decades worth of service out on the Yukon and Tanana rivers. However, in the fall of 1947, the captain of that boat, he decided to take a little bit of a risk. He wanted to make some extra cash, so he tried to squeeze on one extra freight run. And his plans didn't quite pan out how he hoped they would. And that boat ended up getting stuck and frozen into the ice that fall. And they knew that that spelled the end for that boat, because the spring breakup on those rivers are very violent, and they knew it would just crush that wooden boat to pieces. So what they did is they sent out a team to save and salvage all the pieces and parts of value that they could. And lucky enough for me, my grandfather happened to be a part of that salvage crew. And somehow, some way, he ended up coming away with the ship's wheel. And it sat in his workshop for about 40 years until we built Discovery 3 in 1987. And he put it back into service up here as kind of a tribute to those old boats he used to build and work on.
Yeah, well, it's very nice looking and good size, of course, like all the wheels were back then, which is interesting because you like to teach young members of your family to read rivers early. How's a 5 or 6 year old Bingley see over that wheel?